Welcome to Lead Today with me, Kalina. Let's talk leadership. In there. So, hey, I'll make sure that we're recording because I have the tendency to go into conversations and miss some of the best parts for the show. So hey, Jamie, I'm so thrilled that you're here, and I'd love to just kind of get really started with, who you are and how you serve others, because that's what inspired me to reach out to you. So who are you and how do you serve?
Wow, that's I like that. I like the way you put it. How do you serve? Yeah, so my name is Jamie Alonge, and I am a Tai Chi and Qigong teacher and have been doing that, have been learning Tai Chi since the mid 90s. So over a while now, over a while, over 20 years. And I really have served all sorts of people. I really have. For the last 3 years, I was working in the mental health industry, serving people that had mental disorders, like specifically schizophrenia and bipolar, and were also convicted of a crime, and so they were pulled out of um, being incarcerated, and they were put in these homes where they were getting treatment. And I was going in there and doing group Tai Chi group therapy. Um, and so that was what I was doing for the last 3 years straight, full time. And that taught me so much. And that was definitely serving. Just really going in there, trying to uplift folks that, you can have a hard time staying calm. And so that was my job, to calm people down, get them into themselves, show them how they can access moments of tranquility and peace inside, and how anybody can access that. Um, and yeah, and prior to that, I was working at a LGBTQ gym, doing classes for all sorts of folks, and really got involved in specifically the trans community, and was teaching Tai Chi inside of that community, which was another eye-opening experience. Um, just seeing the different versions of yin and yang, or yin and yang, what most people would how most people will pronounce it, and just seeing how, it's not just yin, it's not just yang, it's all sorts of flavors, all sorts of degrees of yin and yang. And then prior to that, I was serving seniors at an assisted living facility when I first got started teaching people that were in their 90s, which was just amazing, like 90s. And, they were doing Tai Chi, and some folks had Parkinson's and some folks had Alzheimer's, but they were participating. And I would watch things like people that were had heavy shakes in the Parkinson's just settle down while they were doing their Tai Chi, and it was just amazing to watch. And yeah, all of 2020 and 2021, I was serving the folks at basically TikTok, the employees of TikTok. So
Okay.
yeah, the employees, the company that sort of owns TikTok, runs TikTok, is called ByteDance. And so ByteDance reached out to me to serve their employees from all over the world, from India, Indonesia, and Hong Kong, and Europe, and South America. We would do these group Zooms for their staff, and do all sorts of of, of Zooms to just settle them down, and get them into their bodies, and all sorts of stress relief. Computer programmers are sitting at their desks a lot, at their computers a lot. So I was doing that for the last 2 years, doing sort of corporate wellness Zooms as well. And yeah, and what's funny about all of this serving is that I was a server for 17 years in the restaurant industry, at one restaurant, basically one of the top restaurants in Los Angeles here, like Tippy 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 Top, paparazzi type famous people every night, restaurants. And for 17 years, while I was attempting to be a musician, have a music career. And that is really where I learned to serve, because the restaurant, the standard was really about going the extra mile all the time. And I learned so much about service there that now it's just such a natural progression to apply it to what I do here. Really informs the way I teach.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting how I was a server when I was younger as well, in my early 20s, and it really informs how you grow no matter what industry or career you head into, right? I mean, all of our experiences, of course, layer onto each other. So it's beautiful that you're bringing that in now. So I mean, a big question I have is, okay, why Tai Chi? Where did that, how did that spark in you, or where did that come from?
Yeah, I was 21, and I was a business owner. I owned a travel agency with my two best friends. We set out on our own as entrepreneurs, and we this was right as the internet started, kind of, in like 1995. And so we and a Tai Chi master walked into our travel agency picking up his airline tickets, and his presence was so powerful. And at the time, at 21, I knew that I lacked spirituality. I was very disconnected. We were starting to become successful in our business. And in that moment of sort of paying myself and having a little bit of money as we were doing our business, I was like, oh, so this is what it's like to have that money question answered. Like, okay, I'm paying myself a little salary, and you know, this is good. And I felt totally empty inside. And I was like, wow, I have no connection to the planet, to myself. It's just sort of like, cool, I got myself like a 1996 Honda Passport with leather interior, and like I got that, and I got an apartment, and like there's nothing, there's no substance. So I realized that, and I started to want some sort of spirituality, and I liked martial arts when I was younger as a kid, and so I wanted a martial art that had a spiritual component. And I knew that Tai Chi had that. And then the Tai Chi master walked into my office and said, "This is your business? You're a kid." And I was like, "Yeah, this is our business." And he said, "Okay, you're a champion already, so let me show you how to be a Tai Chi champion." And so he took me under his wing, and I studied for 5 years and started competing in Tai Chi tournaments, which is where you demonstrate your forms and other skills. And you know, he made me a champion. And so I just studied for 5 years straight, and really absorbed it all in my 20s. But then then I started to get my 30s, and moved back home. This was in Denver, Colorado. And just started to pursue my music, and Tai Chi was more just something like I just kind of would do on my own whenever I felt like it. It was a very personal experience, just go out and do my Tai Chi when the moment struck. But then in my 40s, after being in the waiting industry for 15 years, in my late 30s and 40s, my body started to break down. It really did. I broke a toe on one foot and was on disability for 3 months. And I got right back to work and broke a toe on the other foot and was on disability for another 3 months. And that, when you break your feet, and it just, everything comes from the feet when you stand, obviously. So it just led to other things, extreme tightness in my hamstrings, and yeah, I had some wrist injuries and shoulder injuries. And so this is when I was like, I think I need to get back into Tai Chi again, like seriously. And actually, that's when I started to learn Qigong. And because I had learned Tai Chi, it was very easy for me to learn Qigong, because they're like brother and sister. And so I started to teach myself qigong, and found that it was really curing a back injury that I had, like, fast. It got rid of all my back pain in just a couple of weeks. And then I was like, okay, yeah, I guess my idea of really practicing Tai Chi when I retired became like now at 40. And yeah, and then so I really saw it work for myself. I got myself back in good shape. And then a friend reached out with who ran one of these homes for the folks with the mental disorders, and asked me to begin teaching there. And it was such a hit there that I left the restaurant. And because it's part of the LA County, this program. And so when one house started to enjoy it, all the other houses started to enjoy it. And I started teaching in about 15 houses around Los Angeles, and then became full time.
Yeah, wow. And such an interesting group to work with. I can imagine all of the different groups you talked about. So, and so what is, for anyone that doesn't really know, what is Tai Chi? And then I guess Qigong, because you said they're brother sister. So what are they independently? How do they work together?
Yeah, it's kind of like Qigong is really the big umbrella that everything falls under. So most people, Qigong just means energy work. You know, Qi is your internal energy that powers your body, and then Gong is sort of like the study of. So the study of your energy, or work. So energy work, just like the energy that flows through your body. And but the categories of Qigong is like acupuncture, which most people have heard of, acupressure, even herbs, and massage and meditation. These are all different categories of Qigong, and movement. So when you just move slowly and you incorporate the breath, and you do specific movements that target the internal organs and the internal systems of the body, this is Qigong movement. So it's very, very much like a movement medicine. And this is Qigong. And then there's a division of Qigong that has to do with the same slow motion, the same and movement, but it's martial arts movement. And that's the Tai Chi aspect. So Tai Chi, every movement does have a martial arts application, or it's a self-defense, but most people don't practice it that because it does have all those health benefits. So in today's day and age, people for actual self-defense are using a slew of other techniques for, if you really want to get in there. But Tai Chi is a martial art, but we just practice it slow, typically for the health benefits. Some people do, of course, practice it for the martial arts still. And I do, but as far as what I teach, it's just for the health benefits, because it's under that Qigong umbrella, that energy work umbrella. So the difference is that Tai Chi does have every single move is like, actually doing something in a martial arts nature, rather than just for the organs. So, yeah. So Tai Chi is a Qigong.
Okay. And
Yeah.
so what makes it a martial, what's the difference between what makes it a martial art movement? Is it just the self-defense? Because you also mentioned there's a spiritual component. So, right, because you said, okay, I'm making money, but now I'm this, just feel sort of empty. And so how does the self-defense or martial arts, how does that go into the spiritual side as well? That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. No, great question. Well, one of the main factors of Tai Chi is how to calm down, how to stay calm. I mean, you're rewiring. Tai Chi is considered an internal martial art, where American boxing, for example, is an external art, or straight kung fu, where you're just kind of using speed and strength to overcome your opponent. This would be considered an external martial arts. And Tai Chi is an internal martial art, where the first things you're working on is how to relax your body, how to remain calm, which it sounds easy to do both of those. Those can take years to rewire your system, because most of us, especially when we're confronted with a person in front of us, we want to fight or flight, and neither of those is, the one of the main principles of Tai Chi, which is relax, and be soft like water. or flow like water. And, how softness overcomes hardness is another Tai Chi principle, how to be soft in life. Yeah, it doesn't mean getting walked over and just being, completely, but it just means also, how to, yeah, just sort of stay connected to someone or something, but remain flowing and remain soft in order to let it go where it needs to go. Um, so these are very spirituality type principles that the martial art itself uses, and you literally embody them by, while you're moving, how can you stay calm? Most people, when you teach them a choreography, like a movement, all of a sudden their shoulders get stiff, their back gets tense, right? They start to try to do something. And yes, I'm showing you sort of what direction to move in, but then we add all of this other tension to it. And so it's this whole process of staying calm, staying relaxed, going slow. These are definitely, spiritual processes that take quite a while to embrace. And you embrace them through practice, and then over time they really do sink into your life, and that anger issue that you had really starts to dissipate. That tension that you're holding in your shoulders, or the way your posture sort of is hunched, or when you're typing and you're leaning over and you're arching your back funny, these things start to go away as you become a Tai Chi or Qigong practitioner, because you're practicing standing a certain way and being a certain way, and then they sink into your life.
That's
Yeah.
beautiful. And I definitely think you embody that. It's something that really drew me to you, is the way that you present yourself as certainly flowing like water, I think. Even in the way you speak, it just exudes from everything that you do and the way that you are. And I think that's beautiful and certainly needed today, when I think the hurry rush sort of feeling is just somehow always around. It just feels like I don't know if it's the online space or a lifestyle component, but it feels like this rush feeling and is around for many people. So
It does.
I
I
am, yeah, I am curious because and congratulations too. I know you just recently became a dad, which is so exciting. Um and I am curious how you bring it into, being a parent in your personal life, because you did mention it started at least for you as a personal practice. So how do you use it in, your relationships with, your partner and with your new child? I think because the way we respond to people closest to us it can be, it can be tough when you're so close to someone. Of course, they say things or do things that are challenging. So how do you use it in your personal life with those relationships?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually haven't thought about that one yet, but it is, it's kind of just like that simple way of taking a breath, taking a beat before you react. Just that basic stuff, that is Tai Chi. Instead of just reacting, kind of checking in with yourself, slowing down your responses, and just um, connecting to the other person, seeing what's there, observing, going slow with it. So yeah, I haven't thought about it too much, but I have been definitely trying to be available more for my wife, as of course it's, no matter what's the changes on me, it's even more on her. And just developing that patience, and yeah, just work in progress, you know.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, I wonder how you create that space. So of course, with when you're doing, you said a choreography. So when you're in that practice, right, you're creating space with the slow movements. What are some
Yeah.
of the things that you think about, because you're so practiced at this, right? That I think it probably happens unconsciously to some degree. You're just even being with you right now. I don't feel in a rush. I don't feel that there's something that needs to happen. So you're creating a space where you are, with your
Yeah.
energy. But I wonder kind of, maybe it's how you think, like in the way that you're creating this space. Is it because with coaching with me, it's definitely using questions. So I ask a lot of questions, which creates space for people to think and explore new ideas.
Yeah.
So it seems like definitely the art of silence or pause, there's something there in how you present yourself, even in this context where I don't feel rushed or hurried. Maybe it's also the tone of your voice, how quickly you speak. I'm trying to understand, because you exude it's such a calming and just present energy, I think. And I think we could all use a bit more of that. So I suppose I'm trying to kind of deconstruct and understand, okay, what are the elements of that? What are the elements of being flowing? How can we bring that into our daily lives and interactions more? I know you said slow down. And patience is a good a
Well,
good one.
it's you're gonna like this answer because it's very simple. And the answer is the two principles here, and these are like Tai Chi principles. The principles are very important. It's not just choreography; it's how you do the movements. And these two hows are so the slowing down. You actually, applying it to movement, you would actually think of something that moves slow. So, you know, so for example, one of the visualizations that we have in Tai Chi is to move like a setting sun. And if you think about the way everybody's looked at that sunset go down, and you just seeing that sunset go down, and it is moving because you're seeing how it, at the very end when it's just the yellow sun, it just goes down underneath, but it is moving quite like slow and steady. And it does have this sort of effect on you when you watch it. And so just to have that visualization in your mind, or that thought, I'm going to move like a setting sun, it makes you move so much slower without having to think, let me slow down. Because that's a different vibe. When a lot of people say they can't slow down, I can't do Tai Chi because I can't slow down. I get it. If you think I just got to slow down, you're not going to slow down. But if you think, let me move the way a sun sets, then you can do that. You go, all right, let me mimic. It's a lot of, like my teacher used to say, be the mime. So like, mime something, like mimic something. Another analogy for slowing down is moving like a cloud. So we've all seen the cloud move in the sky. We've looked at the cloud, and they are moving, and you're like, wow, but they're going so slow. But when you move, you're like, I'm gonna move like a cloud. Or if you're gonna talk to somebody, let me talk the way a cloud would move across the sky. All of a sudden, you're not thinking about the pace. You're not, am I going too fast? You're just being something. Right. So that's the way we move slow. And then the way we flow is the old example of in the Tai Chi classics, it says to move like the current of a river. And there's a lot of water analogies. So water is constant and it's flowing. And so when we move our bodies, we do embody that water element. And it's just easy to continue and flow and have that because you're like, okay, well, how would water be moving? So
I love
yeah.
it. I love it,
Yeah.
especially the elements that you're talking about. So I wonder, okay, I know there are five, right? And you mentioned water. So what are the other ones? Because it's actually interesting. I did a training around sales, but they talked about the sales process in relation to the five elements, which I thought was so interesting.
Yeah, that
Um,
is.
yeah, it was sort of, uh, I hadn't conceptualized sales, or again, a way of being with the different elements. So you mentioned water already. How can we embody? I mean, when I think of like metal or wood, a river makes sense to me. I'm not so sure how to be like wood or like metal. Those ones always kind of, I had a tough time understanding. So I'm curious about how you'd speak to the other elements, because water, I can
Yeah.
easily visualize how I could be like water.
Yeah. This is a really deep conversation.
Okay, sorry. If
That's some real Taoist spiritual high level talk there. So I'll do the best I can, but so think about sometimes in those elements that you're talking about, and it's water, fire, wood, earth, and metal. And so it's kind of like you could look at it to where you can't always be water. You know, certain circumstances you need to be fire. You know, certain things you just gotta like burn something down. I can't think of what that would be right now. But when you mention metal, you know, sometimes like let's say you have a big to-do list, right? You need to like slice through it. You need to hatch it through it like you're in the jungle and like whoosh, take it down, take it down. You know, that would be like the metal element, you know, just off the top of my head, right? You know, if you just got a big old long to-do list today and you just like whoosh, 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 that's like you slicing through that to-do list.
Ooh, I
Um,
like that though. That's like a knife or something. Like, I mean,
yeah,
I can that I
you
can get
know,
into. I could be all right.
you
Slice through it like a
know,
knife.
but you know, like sometimes, you know, if your employees, for example, are coming to you with a bunch of gripes, you know, and a bunch of things that need to get changed at the at the company, then you might need to be that water element and just be like, okay, you know, let me take this in, let me flow and just, if you approach those employees with fire, you know, and they're coming at you with fire, that might not be a good thing. You know, wood, I don't know, when you mention wood, I think of being very sturdy and strong and stable, like you know, perhaps you know, when there's a tough situation and you need to be strong for another person, you know, you need to be like somebody's rock or you know, I guess the rock would be like the earth element, you know, if you need to be somebody's rock, that would be being somebody's earth element, you know, if you really need to be supportive. Um, you know, so yeah, that's just a little bit of how I haven't really thought about that, but that's something I really actually do want to explore in my studies are the five elements a lot more and how to apply that in life.
I think you do that really well though in the videos that you make because you talk about different emotions and those emotions do track to the elements in some fundamental sense, right? Like the anger
Yes.
and fire. So I see you doing that already, I guess. Maybe it's not uh, consciously or that you're planning it out, but the way that you're addressing difficult emotions or different emotions, I think you're
Yeah.
doing that really well already in your videos.
Yeah, you're so Taoist.
Oh,
You pick up on a lot of this. Yeah, it's interesting, you know, in these arts, the emotions are tied to specific organs, is the traditional Chinese medicine theory here. And I find that so interesting. And a lot of the people online are really connecting to that aspect of the Tai Chi, I've found. And so like anxiety and is an emotion that is located in our spleen of all the things. The stomach and spleen area is sort of related. And so that's apparently where that lives, which is on the left side of your ribs. And sadness and grief, things of that nature live in the lungs. And fear lives in the kidneys. And anger lives actually in the liver. And hatred lives in the heart. Um, it's very interesting. And just by targeting those specific organs with a movement where the muscles around that organ sort of twist in this opposite direction, the yin and the yang, these movements, they target, they make the muscles move in these opposite directions, which massages the organ underneath the muscle and the meridian that run through that area. And this is what essentially just opens the flowing of the chi through the body so that those emotions can sort of pass and move. And that's why even aside from Tai Chi, that's why you feel better after a workout, you know, or just, you know, a run or something like that, because you've gotten the energy flowing instead of just being stuck.
right, absolutely. And that's what I find so foundational about the elements is that they really go through all of nature and that includes us and our bodies, of course. And it's just so it's such a foundational system that permeates everything, the way we are, the who we are, how, like, our physicality, spiritual, it's just, it's so all encompassing that I've always been really drawn to that. And I think it's beautiful how, and that, again, that word mimic, but we do mimic things in nature because we are nature. And I think somehow there's this tendency to separate ourselves. But
Yeah,
I
that's a
mean,
great point you make there. A lot of people forget that we are nature, and I've been just making myself go out and take walks, or go to the little canyon and take a hike when I'm doing too much work, and it instantly, even just going for a walk around the block to get some fresh air and see a tree. It's just like um that really changes things up. So that's a great point. Nature is everything. And, the old technique of just putting your feet on the earth, that is a very powerful healing technique for things like inflammation and just various ailments. If anybody's listening out there and they are hurting somewhere in their body, take your shoes off and put your feet on some grass, and you will feel totally recharged in 5 minutes.
yeah.
Or dirt even.
Yeah, it's this question of connection that I think is so important, and that includes the dirt, the world around us. It's just, it's how we connect with each other, it's how we connect with ourselves. That it's something I'm perpetually kind of exploring in different areas of my life. And you do mention, though, the 8 brocades, I think it's called. And I wanted to kind of just touch upon that because I don't know anything about them, but it seems to be something that you work with people using these 8 brocades. So what are they?
Yeah, brocade is like a piece of silk. So it's kind of like the 8 silken movements is another word for it. It's a qigong form that is made up of 8 movements. That's like 2,000 years old, and the movements, each movement sort of um, relates to a different organ, which then relates to a different emotion. And so you do these 8 movements in a sequence. It's a very, like, it's the most popular qigong set, pretty much, and classic, and it's considered a medical qigong because it does target the organs. And it just is a really great way for people to have a general, overall, medical way to routine to heal various things in the body and the brain and the joints. And it's actually what they were practicing in the hospitals in China. The nurses were teaching the people that had COVID right in the beginning. They were doing the April Caves. There was like a viral photo that went around of people in full sanitized gear doing with the April Cades. And so I love it's a bit of a challenge because it's like memorizing 8 movements, so it's not like something you can just learn in a day, but it's you learn the 8 movements, you learn the little sequence, you practice it the rest of your life, and it gives you this boost of energy right after you do it. And then it has all these other mental, physical benefits as well. So yeah, it's definitely a standard of mine. I like to teach just standard classic routines. I don't typically like to make anything up or design my own or sort of create something away. Typically, Tai Chi and Qigong is very strict in the way that they teach things in order for the arts to not get diluted, at all, because there's standard ways to do it. So I like to teach all the classic stuff like the 8 brocades.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful and important because, like you said, it has so many different implications. So when there's something in discipline there, when you can really master
Yeah.
a certain movement and be committed to it, there's something. Well, yoga is similar. So I guess that's another really big question. Like, what, because I've definitely explored the yoga world. How do they play together, or do they at all? have you, I mean, do you do yoga? Like how, I don't know if you've got any thoughts there, but how do they, I think they're related in the sense that their movement and they certainly target the organs, but maybe it's the origins that are different. And so they just came from two different traditions. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely yoga, and I know some people blend both of them. A couple Qigong teachers that I know do that very well. But yeah, I every time I've explored yoga, unfortunately, um, I haven't had enough attention from the teacher, and therefore I would injure myself. And I've talked to some yoga teacher friends of mine, and they've explained that it's not the yoga, because yoga is good. It's just that, you know, the teacher wasn't necessarily going around to checking to see if you were doing it right, and if they were, you probably wouldn't have injured yourself. So I just typically enjoy the Tai Chi and the Qigong because I just like being upright on my feet. It just sort of works for my body a little bit better. Um, for whatever reason, if I'm down and putting too much pressure on my wrists and shoulders, it just tends to not work for me. So one of the main differences is that in Qigong and Tai Chi, you are always on your feet, just upright. Actually being straight up and down is um, a main principle, talking about your spine being like a string of pearls hanging from the heavens. We want our spine to be straight up and down, as opposed to being having that big curve in the lower back that we naturally have, and that curve comes into purpose so that we can do all sorts of bends, and we can do that. But in Tai Chi, we actually flatten that curve to it's a big deal. That area in the low back is called the life gate between our lumbar 2 and lumbar 3, and the chi flows from top to bottom in this really nice way, connecting the top and the bottom if that low back is straight. So we tuck our pelvis just a little bit to straighten out that lower back, to remain vertical. And that sort of the concept is that the energy flows top to bottom, and all sorts of other things happen as well. But yeah, yoga is amazing. And I am not that familiar. I know that yoga is involved with the chakras, and so that concept isn't necessarily, we don't use the word chakras in Tai Chi, but I know that they're all related, and it's just an Indian version versus a Chinese version. And a lot of the Indian stuff came actually over to China back in the day, and a lot of the Chinese concepts came out of the Indian concepts. So
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
that's interesting. Yeah, well, I know that they all on the Ayurvedic side and Chinese medicine on the like herbal side. I know they really kind of both are so integrated there. That's something that I think the Western world is catching up with those things, but and they have their own ways with plants, and like there's more of the, yeah, I'm not an expert on this side of things at all, but I do find it interesting again how they integrate with the earth using herbs. And I think there's
yeah.
some practices with different groups in the Western world, but they've just refined it and have such specificity on which herb, when they combine herbs and have treatments for so many things. And I think yoga and Tai Chi are such a beautiful way to work with the body through movement that I don't, if I go to like a fitness class at a YMCA or, like more aerobic, it doesn't have the same spiritual connection as you mentioned, and the metaphors or analogies to reference and visualize, and then the organ connection. Like it feels like they've got a really cohesive system going on with yoga and Tai Chi and all of their philosophies. Whereas
Yeah,
maybe I'm just not as tapped in, and maybe it's more modern culture than, again, because if you look at like Mayan civilizations, I mean, certainly there's absolutely a reference to different elements and using nature's wisdom and all of that. So
it's a
maybe it's more
great point.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Just a difference, something that people find interesting that I'd like to share with your audience is something I read out of the Harvard Medical Guide to Tai Chi. It's just this great book by a Harvard doctor who is also a longtime Tai Chi practitioner, and one thing they talk about in their big takeaway is the 70% rule. And you're talking about like fitness classes and, Western society. And in Tai Chi, it's totally just like you said, it's the opposite. And they talk about the 70% rule to only go 70%, which is just like kind of blows some people's minds, what in the Western world. Oh, wow, we have to go 110%, 111, 150%, whatever it is. And then we wonder why, there's so many injuries and people get hurt doing that 110%. And especially as you get older. So we have this thing, it's this whole thing in Tai Chi. You're definitely not pushing yourself to go 100%. You have to listen to your body and definitely do not go beyond what you can't do. So whenever I find myself in some sort of aerobic fitness space, I always am that guy that's just like easing into it, and just I'll lay back. If this isn't some sort of competition or whatever, then I'm just like, really monitoring my body to make sure that I'm not pushing it to where I know that I won't be able to walk the next day, or I might pull a hamstring or something. And it is that 70% rule to where you don't have to extend your arm all the way above your head. You can just go about 70%. And, just not going to the extremes is a big thing there. So maybe some of your listeners can just take that in and just, we often hurt our own self for no reason, just because the group is doing it, or we're pushing ourselves too hard. So
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I think I need to hear that. Everyone needs to hear that, because absolutely there's such a tendency, but I think that extra 30% and beyond, I think the performance suffers anyway. So you can be 150%, but what are you really kind of squeezing out of that, or what are you getting? I think it's really suboptimal. And I love it because I've heard also about eating till 70% or so full, right? So not so it's this concept of just not excess, but I don't know if it's balance. It's more
yeah,
just humble, or sort of it's just enough. It's not too
yeah,
much, too little. It's this balanced, really like satiated, but not too much, not too little. It's this beautiful balance kind of idea that I think we all
that's
we
a great
all
point. Yeah, like being content. And that's hard with eating, I find that hard. Like, I love to eat, and it's just like, oh, let me just eat till I can't. And then it's very difficult being content. Yeah. Joy is actually one of the excesses in the five element world. Joy lives in our heart, and, like happiness and joy and love. But the philosophy is that you can actually have too much joy, and then it becomes a problem, just like, too much of a good thing is not necessarily a good thing anymore.
Yeah, which I also think is a beautiful concept, because if we're pushing, we think more is better often, but as you just outlined, it's not necessarily. And actually that moderation, being able to moderate, come back to the middle. Obviously there are extremes in life, but being able to find our way back to the middle is actually the beneficial, or the beautiful point to be at. So the extremes are a part of life. But I took a Buddhism and mindfulness course in university, and she kind of talked about it like a circle. And then when you're meditating, you go out to the edges, but you're always kind of coming back to that main point of focus. And it almost looked like a flower, because she kept kind of going like this back to the center point. And I think that ability to come back to the center point and be aimed at that center point it's easy to forget about when we're out in the edges. But
Ah, come
um
on back. Come on back.
yeah.
That reminds me of, actually, I have been sober for, let's see, this August will be, I think, 2 years. And I mean sober from just marijuana, was my like nighttime little treat, for many, many years. And so for 2 years now, there's been none of that. And it was because I was tired of the highs and lows. I was tired of getting really high and then coming all the way back down, and then, going up again and then going way down past the middle. And I just got to that point where I was just like, I just want to be in the middle. I just want to be able to regulate my own emotions a lot more, and just have that balance, instead of just being like, woohoo, and then, you know so that's the reason why I've remained, what has kept me sober, for going on almost 2 years now.
Yeah, for me it was drinking, and I stopped drinking in 2019, so it's been a few
Nice.
years. And I same sort of idea, like being drunk was this fun kind of, sometimes not fun, but rush, and then just the hangover. It's the same sort of idea, and it's the excess, I think, the extreme. For
Yeah.
sure. And people, money, people do it in all sorts of areas of their lives, right? Like we've talked about. But I think and that's what's interesting. As a kid, you kind of, early 20s, like you're really testing the extremes. Like, what are the limits? And then as people age, I find they kind of come into that a bit. I don't know. I see it as like this sort of curve, and they sort of come into this balance where they sort of know, they know who they are and how they want to be. And they kind of have that sorted to some degree, not always, but it's sort of
Yeah.
this interesting thing in life, I think, that happens too with the way we grow. Like we're kind of testing, and then oh, I don't know how to explain it. Like we sort of come back to vibrating at this middle point. Like we reach that set point somehow.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I'm a very late bloomer, as I just turned 49.
Oh, I
um
can't even believe that. You like that's another thing I think, oh my goodness, and time. I want to make sure but yeah, how does this impact, vitality and feeling? I know you've mentioned you get energy after, let's say, you do the 8 brocades, but how have you seen it kind of transform beyond just, okay, healing injuries, and you get to that kind of point, but these sort of benefits of vitality, because you're such a youthful, it's not even young, it's vitality, really. I don't think it's an age question. It's really like you have this life force vitality,
yeah.
that you represent. So how does Tai Chi work with that? Or what do you do if there's other stuff outside of Tai Chi, because you look amazing and you're so vibrant.
Thank you. It just is this feeling of energy, having the energy, having the energy to go. I used to never be able to keep up with my wife on the trails, and and when we would travel, how she'd just have these really long agendas for the day. And that's no longer a factor. Just having that vitality, it's just like having reserves of fuel that don't really deplete. And yeah, it's just as simple as that. It's just this great feeling of just having stamina. And it even affects the libido as well. And so it raises that. And yeah, the feeling of not used to being able to be keeping up with my wife was just a yucky feeling. She'd be disappointed if I was lagging behind on the trail or whatever. And now, it's like this joke where she's getting winded. She doesn't do Tai Chi or Qigong, and she'll be winded, and I'll be like, okay, the tables have turned.
Yeah, sure. And I think it's interesting you mentioned libido, because people shy away from sexual energy. So, or it's often hidden, right? We kind of don't want to talk about it. But I think the sexual energy is so powerful and such a big part of being vital, being youthful. The reason being youthful is, I think, partially really attractive is because of that fertility, because of that vitality that comes from our sexual energy. So I think I, I just think it's logical and important to mention that, or have that be also an indicator for people, right? Like, and look at what true libido is, right? Like, not cheap
Yeah.
porn or things that are I don't think that's a true marker of libido, or it's more like this weird, if you listen to Andrew Huberman, but he talks a lot about dopamine, right? So it's more of like a reward, kind of like that nighttime treat that you talked about with weed. It's not so much an actual marker of true vitality by means of looking at your libido, because your libido is signaling to you, okay, you're healthy, because when you're healthy, you want to procreate, you want to continue your lineage. That's a part of being a healthy human being. So I think it's an important marker that you're mentioning, that people sort of shy away from for some reason. It's hidden.
Yeah. And I think personally, I channel a lot of that energy into just the energy I give out to people. It doesn't necessarily
Wow.
have to be to the act of having sex either. It can be channeled just into to love,
Whoa.
sharing love with everyone.
I think that's really interesting. No, it's fascinating to that's another thing that people often think of it in this one really siloed way, right? Okay, libido means this, and it has to be with my partner or be sex. That's what libido translates to. So I think it's really fascinating that there's this whole world of, no, you can transmute that energy for others, for the
Yeah.
service, for serving, which you do amazingly well. So hey, I just want to thank you so much for being here today. It's meant a lot to me, and I'm sure everyone's going to gather a lot from. We covered a lot of ground, I think.
Yeah, we did. It was a pleasure. This was great. What a free flowing like water talk we had. That was
Good,
amazing.
yeah.
Thanks for having me.
We'll
Yeah,
have to do it again. I really think this last piece is fascinating to me, transmuting our energy into different, channeling it into different places. So that might have to be our part two at some point.
sounds good. Yeah, we can get into that.
Thanks so much for taking the time to listen to this episode today. It really helps the show when you like, review, subscribe, or donate to support the effort to continue producing amazing episodes just like this one. I look forward to seeing you again in another episode very soon, and take good care until then.